by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy.
Let's win there.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAC.
Well, you have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so
Exactly.
That's not so bad.
Exactly.
I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
And I'm back. All right, the first thing that I want to do is I want to check my audio because I don't think I sound loud enough to me, but you tell me. I'm here. Welcome, everybody. I wanted to start today by thanking the supporters of the Duke Report. You know, one of the things that I decided to do, I probably started doing it a year ago, is that I started charging for the privilege of leaving comments on the stories that I post. And a lot of people are critical of that, but one of the things that it did immediately is that it got rid of all trolls. So I didn't have any trolls anymore. And then the other thing that I noticed was that all of the comments that I got, whether they agreed with me or not, were incredibly thoughtful. And by virtue of the fact that the comments are thoughtful, it turns into a real engagement for me. And what I mean by that is that my critical thinking is engaged. And not everybody agrees with me. And when people don't agree with me and they're paying for the privilege to comment, I consider their critique seriously. And so there's one guy that I'd like to call out, a guy named Pete Ross. And, you know, I've never met Pete Ross. The screen name is Pete Ross. There's a picture of a guy and, you know, he seems like a real person. But Pete doesn't always agree with me. And but when he doesn't agree with me, it's always thoughtful. And I was talking about the Hiroshima thing, I think, a few days ago. And Pete said, he said something to the effect of, nobody's ever done any game theory on that, which gave me an idea. And the idea was to feed GPT some John von Neumann and then see if it could come up with a Rand-style white paper on a thought experiment. And it turned out that it can. And so for people who want to play around with GPT or, you know, what Gemini, whatever AI engine you're playing with, I discovered that if you frame whatever it is that you're trying to do as a thought experiment, it pretty much goes around all of the safety rules that the AI I'm going to just check my audio one more time. I see people are liking my audio, but I have two reminders here just to check it just in case. And it seems like it's working perfectly. Okay, great. So it led me down this road where I invented this fake institute called the Silver Strand Institute at Point Hueneme, California. And I assumed that in 1943, in the middle of World War II, that some analysts got together and figured out that they were never going to be able to build a nuclear bomb before the end of the war. And so they gamed out strategies. And for people who don't know what game theory is, and I'll give you a little bit of background. When I was a kid, so my mother, before I was born, lived in West Los Angeles, and she worked at the Rand Corporation as a librarian. And I think that she worked there with her identical twin sister. And I moved to Woodland Hills when I was 10 years old, and my next door neighbor was this mathematician named Larry Coons, and Larry Coons worked at Rand. And Larry Coons was into all of these board games that were made by a company called Avalon Hill. And so I started playing all of these games, and Avalon Hill games were designed by the same people who built strategic simulations at Rand. And so when I was 10 and 11 years old, when other kids were playing, Life or Game of Life or Monopoly or Checkers or whatever it is that they were playing, I was playing these Avalon Hill games. And so game theory has been a part of my life for a long time. When I got into high school, I struggled in algebra. I was never very good at math. And my algebra tutor was a guy named Lee Attaway, and he was a mathematician at Rand. So, I grew up with a lot of these Rand type people. And so game theory is something that I understand. And so I took Pete Ross's suggestion. I fed some John von Neumann into GPT, and I gave it some assumptions, and it kicked out an incredible presentation that looked just like a white paper that you would get out of someplace like Rand. I'm going to use a little AI. So some more, obviously this is AI, this image. But I'm going to bring in a little bit of AI. Instead of my explaining the silver strand hypothesis to you, I'm going to run a little video that I made using, I'm using different types of AI. I used Google's Notebook LM to create this video. So I'm going to give you a little short video on the silver strand hypothesis. So here we go.
Right. Today, we're diving into something truly mind-bending. It's a thought experiment called the silver strand hypothesis. And trust me, this is one of those ideas that might just make you question, well, the very foundation of modern power. So let me just throw this out there. What if the most powerful weapon of the 20th century was really just a story? I mean, think about it. The entire nuclear age, the Cold War, the idea of mutually assured destruction. What if all of it was built on a really, really well-managed lie?
Okay, so before we go any further, I gotta be super clear about this. What we're exploring here is a thought experiment. It's not a conspiracy theory. It all comes from a source called the Duke Report, and it's based on a fictional government memo from 1943. The whole point is to imagine a world that looks just like ours, but with one giant secret hiding right in plain sight. And that secret? Well, it's breathtakingly simple, but whoa, is it a big one. The premise is this. What if a deliverable atomic weapon was never actually created? Like, what if the technology just hit a wall in the lab? But instead of admitting it, a small group of people decided the idea of the weapon was just too powerful to let go of.
And that's where we get the official name for this whole idea, the silver strand hypothesis. It's basically a framework for understanding a world where managing what people believe becomes a more powerful strategic tool than physics itself. So here's the really wild part. The hypothesis suggests that you could have a global system of nuclear deterrence that functions perfectly, I mean perfectly, without a single deliverable nuclear weapon existing anywhere. The entire thing would just be running on a carefully engineered and shared illusion. This quote from the source material just nails it. In this alternate reality, the real instrument of power was never the physical device. It was the story of the device. The narrative itself became the ultimate weapon.
Now, what's so fascinating is how this hypothesis makes you reread key moments of the Cold War. You start to see them not as historical events, but as these carefully staged acts of perception management.
Let's take the Rosenberg trial. Conventionally, we see it as a trial to punish the theft of atomic secrets, right? But in the silver strand view, it was pure theater. The state didn't sacrifice 2 lives to protect a secret, but to prove to the entire world that there was a secret worth stealing in the first place. It validates the whole illusion.
Or how about James Jesus Angleton, the legendary CIA chief? He's often painted as this paranoid guy acting against U.S. interests. This hypothesis reframes him as a master strategist. His actions weren't betrayal, they were moves to extend the illusion. By sharing little bits of a secret that can't be verified, you lock other nations into the myth. You make them both custodians and hostages of the story.
And the Cuban Missile Crisis? We think of it as the moment the world came closest to nuclear war. But in this theory, that was the moment the illusion hit its peak. It was a symmetrical dance of fear, where both sides used visible props, the missiles, as talking points for an invisible and maybe non-existent threat. It was a perfectly managed piece of global theater. So you're probably asking, how on earth could you build and maintain a fiction this massive? Well, the hypothesis lays out a chillingly plausible blueprint. It treats the whole thing like a strategic game. And it all comes down to incentives. Every major player has a reason to play along. The state leadership gets a massive strategic edge. Contractors get huge funding, allies get status and access, and even your adversaries are so busy trying to achieve parity that they end up reinforcing your illusion for you. With everyone benefiting, who has a reason to expose the secret? And this creates this incredibly powerful feedback loop. The leadership starts the secret. Then contractors produce signals of progress, reports, prototypes, weird facilities in the desert. This activity is then projected to the world as a credible threat. And then everyone else reacts, which reinforces the belief. And the system just grows and grows until the cost of not believing becomes catastrophically high for everybody.
So this system doesn't just stay a secret. According to the hypothesis, it evolves. It becomes an entire empire of secrecy, a self-validating reality that's built around an empty center.
So how do you even kickstart a global belief like this? You need a demonstration. The first event, Hiroshima, is the shock. It creates a sudden, massive belief that the weapon exists. But a second one, Nagasaki, is absolutely crucial. That signals replication. It tells the world this wasn't a fluke. We can do this on an industrial scale. And from there, the system just reinforces itself. Politically, the threat is used to justify endless secrecy. Economically, entire industries and thousands of jobs come to depend on the project. Culturally, the atomic symbol, the mushroom cloud, it gets embedded in everything. And maybe most importantly, the bureaucracy of secrecy gets so huge that the process of verifying activity completely replaces any need to verify the actual truth. Now you might be thinking, okay, this is a fascinating historical what if, but what does it have to do with today? Well, the source argues this model of power is more relevant than ever. The idea is that the same architecture of belief management, supposedly perfected in the atomic age, is now at work all around us in the digital world. The instruments are different. It's not warheads and plutonium anymore. It's code, data, AI, and surveillance, but the fundamental principle of controlling perception to project power, that's exactly the same.
And that's maybe the final, most chilling takeaway from the source material. This method of control, this empire of belief, it didn't just vanish with the Cold War. The fiction has evolved, not ended.
So, if there's one core idea to take away from all this, it's this. The hypothesis argues that immense, world-shaping power doesn't necessarily need a physical foundation. It can be built and maintained entirely through the sophisticated management of what we all believe to be true. Which leaves us with a final question to think about. If this thought experiment has any truth to it, if power really can be built on a story, what are the essential fictions that govern our world today?
Alrighty then. So this is, let me take this out. And we've got some comments here. Janish said, gotta say that there are no nukes. Sounds worryingly close to the blah blahs are not real. One of the things that I thought about when I started working on this is that by talking about nuclear bombs, which are not really in the news cycle at this point, not much, not like other existential things that you're not allowed to talk about on the internet, I thought that this is a very good way to kind of float this idea that there are things in the news that they use to scare us that may not actually exist the way that they're talking about them. Xanadu Zimba said, I clicked the wrong one, but he said he likes the voices better on this one. Yeah, I understand why people don't like the voices. I don't actually think it's the voices. What I think that it is on the podcast, the robots, the AI voices act like they're real people, and they use expressions like real people would use, and that's called the uncanny valley effect, and it makes people feel uncomfortable. So yeah, the voices are better on this. But he also said, if there are nuclear power plants, chances are there are nuclear weapons. In my view, maybe. I don't think so. I think that I think plutonium is a real thing, and I think that there's probably all kinds of things that they can use plutonium for besides nuclear warheads. I don't know. Maybe I think it's the most carcinogenic material on the planet. So if you wanted to, you know, weaponize it by giving people cancer, plutonium is really good for that. Anyway, I digress. So you know, so one of the things that I thought was, you know, really fundamentally cool about going through this process is that the AI did do the GPT. When I brought the von Neumann into it, it really did come up with a bunch of different scenarios that I hadn't even considered when I built the prompt. And one of the things that it spit out was that that there would be people out there in the social media spaces whose jobs it would be to maintain the illusion. And so I can't remember whether or not producer Jessica sent it to me or whether or not it was suggested by an algorithm, but the story popped up in front of me by this guy, Wise Wolf, who I've never heard of before, but he's got 55,000 subs, you know, which is like, okay, this is a serious account. And he wrote this story that he co-wrote with this person. And again, I've never met them. I've never talked to them. I don't know that they are real people. This person calls themselves Wise Wolf. This person is Lily Rose Dawson. She's got two different profiles on Substack. This one is 3 years old, and she says she's 19 years old and a cult survivor and an abuse survivor. So and Wise Wolf, we can take a look at him here in a second. Let's go look at Wise Wolf. We'll share. Let me find a tab with Wise Wolf. This should work. Share this tab, share screen. And here's the story. Let me see. Where did it go? Here it is. I'll do the other version of it. I don't know why Substack has two different versions of each thing. So someone wants you to believe nuclear weapons don't exist. Here's why. So this came out almost simultaneously as the Silver Strand hypothesis came out. And I read it. And it's pretty wacky. And one of the things that I noticed that was wacky about it was that if it's co-written, you can see at the top here, Wise Wolf and Lily Rose Dawson. So let's look at Wise Wolf here for a second.
Of podcasts and thought-provoking chat.
That's Wise Wolf. Click on the thing and click on about and share this tab instead. And so it's a picture of a guy in a suit with a surfboard, and he's like walking away. This is like an AI picture. And let me see. Wise Wolf Media is the brainchild of a recently retired and slightly stir-crazy former stock analyst and internet marketer. Thanks to his knack for spotting tech trends, he made a small fortune and kissed his 9-to-5 goodbye at the ripe age of 44. And now he spends his days pretending he knows how to surf on the beaches of beautiful Florida, USA, after becoming thoroughly disillusioned by corporate sector and finding God. So he's got this kind of like, okay, I made it and I'm really smart and I've got money and I don't have to work anymore kind of profile. Okay, but we don't really know that. I don't know anything about him. Say anybody could write this, right? He could be somebody who is an analyst sitting in Arlington, Virginia, and has a signature reduction contract with the Pentagon. I don't know, but you know, he also has Lily Rose Dawson here as so. You know, my bias is to think, oh, he's really a retired investor guy. He lives in Florida, and this is his daughter. Is my thought. And if you look at her account, she has 111 subscribers. So maybe what he did is he wrote this story, and in order to get more clout with, Gen Z, he said, "Hey, why don't you cross-post this, and I'll give you a co-author." I don't know what the story is. Okay, I don't know these two people. I don't know anything about them except that they popped up. The algorithm pushed this story up to me, and the story is someone wants you to believe nuclear weapons don't exist. And instead of going through a big explanation of that, I'm going to run another video because I took, so what I did is that I read this and I analyzed what he was writing, and this is a fact-free post. That is, I'm sorry, it's an evidence-free post where this guy doesn't really give any evidence about why nukes are fake or real, except that he's got a lot of opinions about it, and he has a lot of theories, but he doesn't really have any kind of backup. And so what I noticed though was that he was using a tremendous amount of linguistic, I would say, tradecraft. And so rather than go after this guy and his daughter or whoever they are, again, there may not be any Lily Rose Dawson. I don't know that these people are real. That I would just go through this thing and I would do an analysis of it using the meta model framework that I've talked about here on the show many times. And so that's exactly what I did. And let me see if I could pull that up. The Duke Report. And it's called How to Believe a Bomb. So I wrote this article called How to Believe a Bomb, where I go through the entire post and I pull out all of the linguistic tells. So I pull out the yes ladder, which he starts with, and the cause effect statements that he makes, and the complex equivalence statements that are made, and the other linguistic tells, and I pull it all together. And then what I did is I fed my article and his article and the Silver Strand thesis back into Notebook LM, and it created this video. So let me play this video for you now. And these videos are short. They're not that long.
Every so often, you stumble upon a debate online that is just completely wild. And today, we're diving headfirst into one of them. This is a story about two totally different versions of reality, and they both revolve around one of the most powerful concepts in modern history, the atomic bomb. It all kicks off with this pretty shocking claim from an article by The Wise Wolf: nuclear weapons aren't real. Now, this isn't just some fringe comment anymore. It's an actual narrative that's picking up steam, suggesting that this whole atomic age we've been living in, it might just be a massive, elaborate hoax. I mean, it's a bold thing to say, and for most of us, it just sounds nuts.
But then you get the counter-argument, and it just flips the whole thing on its head. This question right here suggests that maybe we're not talking about physical weapons at all. Maybe this is really a battle between two incredibly powerful stories, a war over what's real, and how we've been convinced of that reality.
What's so wild is that the two main sources we're pulling from for this, the two articles laying out these opposing realities, were actually published within just days of each other. So we're going to break down both sides of this argument, step by step, to see exactly how each one tries to make its case.
Okay, so here are the two sides laid out clean and simple. In one corner, you've got The Wise Wolf. Their argument is all about material certainty, basically that nukes are 100% real and anyone telling you otherwise is part of a dangerous psychological operation. And in the other corner, you have The Duke Report, which puts forward this much stranger idea that the entire nuclear age is really just a highly sophisticated system for managing what we all believe.
Let's start with the first perspective,
the case for real, physical nukes, as argued in that Wise Wolf article. This is a direct pushback against all that growing online skepticism. So the crucial thing to understand about this argument is the motive. According to this article, convincing people that nukes are fake isn't just some quirky internet theory. No, they claim it's a deliberate, calculated strategy to get us to lower our guard, leaving an entire population totally unprepared for a very real, very catastrophic attack. The Wise Wolf article builds its entire case on 3 key pillars. First, there's an argument from basic physics they call the sun doesn't lie. Second, an argument from engineering history, the thorium test. And third, a pretty chilling theory about motive that they call the reset fantasy. Okay, now check out how the logic flows here. It's pretty interesting. The argument starts with physics we can all agree on. The sun is real, that's nuclear fusion. So, nuclear fission, the science behind the bomb, must be real too. Then comes what they present as the smoking gun, our global decision to use uranium for nuclear power instead of the much safer alternative, thorium. Why? They argue it's because uranium produces weapons-grade material. And the motive behind it all? This so-called reset fantasy, where a global elite actually wants a nuclear war to wipe the slate clean and put themselves back on top. All right, let's hit pause on that and pivot to the other side of this whole thing. The Duke Report doesn't just come out and say nukes are fake. No, it offers a much more complex and honestly maybe even more disturbing theory about power, secrecy, and the nature of belief itself. This is the core of their argument, the Silver Strand hypothesis. It's basically a thought experiment. It asks us to imagine a world where the bomb was never a real, deliverable weapon, but was instead a weaponized idea. An idea so terrifyingly powerful that just controlling the belief in it could stabilize global politics, mobilize entire economies, and concentrate power more effectively than any physical arsenal ever could. This slide just lays out the 2 worldviews perfectly. On the one hand, you have the official story we all learned. Deterrence is based on a very real, very physical threat. But on the other hand, you have the Silver Strand idea. It's all perception control. And from this perspective, a historical moment like the Cuban Missile Crisis wasn't a close call with actual annihilation. It was a performance, a choreographed symmetrical dance of fear where the missiles were just the props needed to keep us all believing in the story. So how on earth does the Duke Report even begin to make this case? Well, this is where it gets really fascinating. Instead of debating the physical evidence, it does something completely different. It analyzes the language of the Wise Wolf article itself, arguing that the real fight here is being waged with words. So, the entire focus shifts. It's no longer, is the bomb real? It's, how does this article make you believe the bomb is real? The central claim is that the Wise Wolf piece uses a specific set of persuasive language tools, linguistic tricks really, that are designed to build a powerful sense of conviction without ever having to provide any solid proof. The first tool they point out is something called the yes ladder. The idea is actually super simple. You get your audience to agree with a series of statements that are obviously true. This creates this rhythm of yes, 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 which makes it way more likely that they'll just accept your final, unproven claim without even thinking to question it. And here's that exact technique in action, pulled straight from the Wise Wolf article. The sun exists. Well, yes. This is nuclear fusion. Okay, yes. It's real. Yes. The article is literally walking you up this ladder of undeniable facts, building that pattern of agreement before it delivers the big finale. The second tool they highlight is called complex equivalence. It sounds fancy, but it's basically just a linguistic shortcut. It's when you take 2 totally different ideas and present them as if they are the exact same thing. It creates this powerful connection that feels logical, even though there's no actual argument or evidence connecting them. And there it is. The final step on the yes ladder is also a perfect example of complex equivalence. This statement equates denying a man-made weapon with denying the existence of the sun itself. According to this linguistic analysis, that's not a logical argument. It's a clever, persuasive sleight of hand. Here's another fantastic example. Just notice the power of that tiny word is. It creates a direct one-to-one link. The article doesn't bother to argue why the movement is like a cult. It just flat out states that it is one. The Duke Report points out that this is a super effective way to slap a negative label on an idea and dismiss it without ever having to engage with it. So after digging into both arguments and the linguistic tricks used to build them, we're left standing in the middle of 2 completely separate realities, and it really all boils down to one fundamental question. Let's just sum it all up. In reality A, the bomb is a physical object, And the real danger is a psychological operation designed to make us forget that. But in reality B, the idea of the bomb is the real weapon, and the real danger is the persuasive language being used to control what we believe.
And this is where the Duke Report lands its final, most challenging point. It goes all the way back to the very origin of the nuclear age and asks for the specific, hard proof that separates the destruction of Hiroshima from the other massive, conventional firebombing raids that utterly destroyed other Japanese cities.
And to back this incredible question up, the report actually points to a pretty surprising historical account from a military analyst named Alexander D. Seversky, who inspected Hiroshima right after the war. He apparently reported back to the U.S. Secretary of War that he found no crater and that the damage looked just like what you'd see from firebombs, not some brand new, unique atomic blast. And that leads us to this final, haunting question, taken right from the source material. When language becomes the blast radius, where do you stand to measure the fallout? This entire bizarre debate suggests the real conflict isn't just about physics or history. It's about the stories we tell ourselves and the power of the words used to make us believe them. It really leaves you wondering, if our belief itself is the target, how can we ever be sure what's real?
All right. So I thought that they did a pretty good job on that also. And I just have to figure out how to get it off the stage. There we go. I'll put myself back like this. All right. So so I've been busy the last couple of days. Pete Ross gave me the challenge. I figured out how to create the RAND white paper. And it's funny because I've been having all these kind of revelations since I've been going through this process. My mother, like I said, was a librarian at RAND, and my mother told me that RAND, R-A-N-D, stands for Research and No Development. And I've argued with George Webb about this before because famously RAND supposedly invented the neutron bomb. And I was going through all of this stuff and I was remembering all these things. And I was thinking, well, there is no neutron bomb, but RAND invented it, because what RAND does is RAND is a story factory. Where is RAND? They're in Santa Monica. What is Santa Monica next to? Hollywood. So like all of these things, these weapon systems, these opinions, these strategy positioning papers, all these things, they're all kind of mind control papers, right? And basically, and I was thinking about Annie Jacobson's book, The Pentagon's Brain, because she says right in the beginning of that book that RAND stands for Research and Development, which it doesn't. And I don't know if somebody told her that, or it's a wink. I don't know. But my mother told me that RAND stands for Research and No Development. So the longer that I worked on this, the more I started to believe my own hype. And then I started looking at other things. When I part of what kind of led me to this too was the whole Angleton story. Like if you read The Ghost by Morley, Jefferson Morley, there's a whole bunch of information in that book about the number 2 guy, the head of counterintelligence for the CIA. He was there longer than Allen Dulles, because Kennedy didn't fire him when he fired Allen Dulles. That Angleton helped smuggle uranium out of the United States to help the Israelis build their nuclear weapons program. Well, that's a great story. Of nuclear weapons are an imaginary thing. Now, just to be clear here, I want to be very clear. I think that you can use uranium and different types of nuclear isotopes to boil water. And for that reason, you can build a nuclear reactor and power a city or nuclear submarine or an aircraft carrier or anything like that. I think you can use it to boil water. And you may actually be able to build a bomb with it if the bomb is as big as a house, or as big as a small building. You may be able to build something. I just don't know that there was ever a time when you could fit one into an airplane or fit it into the nose cone of a missile. I just, my supposition is they couldn't figure out how to do that. but once you get this fear factory, and let's just call it a fear factory. The cabal runs a fear factory. Once you get the fear factory running, you can put new programs into it. You can put you could put the US space shuttle program into it, right? Because because we faked the moon landing. Or you could put the moon landing into it, right? So you get the whole machine going with nukes, and then you put the Apollo moon program into it, and then you build the space shuttle. But at some point, you need to upgrade all of your equipment, and you need to make the space shuttle probably could have continued to run to this day, right? But the way that the military industrial complex works is that they like to get the newer, better stuff, right? And so you have to have a reason for retiring the space shuttles. And what you need to do is you need to make 2 of them blow up, right? You needed 2 atom bombs in order to sell the atom bomb idea. You needed 2 space shuttle explosions in order to make the space shuttle program stop and come up with something else. That's why I think that Elon Musk's every time Elon Musk says that we're going to Mars, he's just a liar. I think that the Pentagon needs a heavy lift capability, and I think that there's a movie that you can watch called The Creator, where it shows something that's probably much more in line with what they want to build, which is a low orbit space station that is used to attack the surface of the planet Earth. And coincidentally, the shape of the ship in that movie looks like a Tesla logo. Maybe I can go find it. But let me go look at some of the comments here first. And if you got any questions, put a Q by it and then ask a question, and I'll see if I can go find that Creator video. All right, Artemis Forest Fairy, our friend down in down under, they don't need nukes anymore. They have silent weapons for quiet wars. Well, again, my thesis is that the only nuclear, if there ever were nuclear weapons, there was that explosion at the Trinity site in New Mexico, and maybe the big Soviet above ground tests that they did. The Tsar Bomba, I think, was one of them. If that's actually even real, or again, there's so much that can be done with photography. I don't know what's real, right? And one of the things that I put into the model when I was creating the silver strand hypothesis is that because we know for a fact that through Major Jordan's diaries and all of the Defense Department accounting that Anthony Sutton came up with, that we were shipping nuclear stuff over to the Soviet Union at the same time that we were in an arms race with them. So none of that makes any sense if you are sticking with the conventional story. And so then the question winds up becoming, well, if we know that we were shipping material to the Soviet Union at the same time that we were supposedly competing with them, then what are the different scenarios that you can come up with that would fit that set of facts, right? And one of them is they were in on it, right? One of them was, oh, this is a great way to control everybody in our sphere of the world, is to get them to be afraid of nuclear annihilation. Ha ha, we're going to tell them all that we're building all of these nuclear warheads. Ha ha, we're not really building them, but all of the people who are involved in the supply chain don't need to know that, right? So, yes, I'm tangentially agreeing with you. Here we go. This I thought was very interesting, and I screenshotted it, and I will go look it up after the show. But JFB mentioned something called Special Tasks by Pavel Sudplatov, and he goes on to say that you can literally read the declassified Soviet papers in that book. And I'm assuming that it's declassified Soviet papers about how nuclear weapons are fake. So after the show, I'll have to go check that out. But for anybody else who wants to screenshot it, the name is Pavel Sudplatov. But again, I'm probably not going to spend the rest of my life looking at nuclear weapons. I think it's probably more constructive to try to figure out what are the other things that we've all fallen for. So, like I said, landing on the moon, the Challenger explosions. We all know about the what do you call it? The Gulf of Tonkin. In the white paper, I talk about the frying of the Rosenbergs, and in my thesis, the Rosenbergs were fried in order to make sure that everybody believed that there were nuclear secrets to be stolen. The Cuban Missile Crisis was choreographed. Whether or not Kennedy was in on it or not, we don't know. But that might have been the reason that he fired Allen Dulles, was not because that all went wrong, but because it was a giant manipulation of him. And then the Rosenbergs, the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis. There's one other one. I can't remember what it is, but it'll come to me in a second. Anyway, and then, all of the nonsense that we've been going on with right now. So going to Mars, I think that that's fake. I think that the AGI thing is fake. I use AI. I used AI to do a lot of the things that I showed you today, to write these stories, to do all these other things. But if you understand that AI is really, really sophisticated spell checker, then you can't imagine that it's ever going to replace a sentient human being unless the human beings have been so dumbed down that they can't tell the difference, which, that could happen. Xanadu Zimba also said, signature reduction job. Wow, a new area of employment for me to pursue. Sarcastic. Well, Xanadu Zimba, I'm not sure. Here we go. Share this tab instead. Again, I'm not making this up. I went into a building in Arlington, Virginia about 10 years ago where the whole building was filled with little offices with little symbols on the front, on the doors of the offices that made them look like really official government offices, but they actually weren't. They were just contractors. And they had all these, it was real. I went into this office and they had these monitors. Each guy sitting at his desk had 4 screens. And if you walked behind him, there was a camera that looked over his shoulder that would black all the screens out. So if anybody came into the office who wasn't cleared, like I was going in there for a meeting about something completely unrelated. I didn't know anything about signature reduction when I went in there. I was going in there to talk to them about doing a street art poster job. You walk behind these guys who are doing all this work, and their screens go black, and then their hands come off the keyboard, and they wait for you to walk away. And then when you walk away, their screens pop back on, and then they can continue to work. So signature reduction, there in this Newsweek article that came out in 2021, I think it says that the Pentagon has 60,000 people under contract. So when you wonder about trolls, online, every time George Webb goes online, there are people that jump into his threads and just start attacking him. And these are signature reduction people. So there are people who increase signature. There's people who reduce signature. This is a real job, and I'm not making it up. This is Newsweek. So you could probably, they probably hire freelancers. Anyway. All right. Hide. And we'll turn this off. And got too many things going here. Let's see. Stantan says, the theory then should confirm the idea that the US, Western powers, and the Soviets, Russians, Chinese are all one and the same at the very top levels. For if not, how could one bloc trust the other on this? Well, not necessarily. And this is something that the AI came up with that I didn't come up with. Okay. That was really cool. Okay. And that is the equilibrium. Okay. So we've all heard of John Nash. It's a Beautiful Mind. And there's something called an equilibrium in a game, and in game theory. And an equilibrium is where the motives of all of the people who are playing the game, it's in their best interest to keep the lie going. Okay. So to your point, Yes, I do believe that China's been on board since the Rockefellers went in. David Rockefeller went in the 70s and made a deal. And I think that the Russians have probably been in since, well, at least Russia's a curious one. But yeah, Russia's probably since the 90s been in on it also, at the very top. And so, but what happens is, what I explain in it is that after the in that period of time between dropping the bomb on Nagasaki, and I found a really great video that I tweeted out yesterday where this guy goes through all of the bombing runs and all of the U.S. Air Force history, and he figures out which bomb group flattened Hiroshima and which bomb group flattened Nagasaki. Okay, he does it's in my Twitter feed. The guy does a really good job of figuring it out. And if you figure that in between the time, and at that point, the Japanese were probably had to be in on it. Okay. And maybe the promise was, go along with us on this lie and we'll completely rebuild your economy at the end of the war. And if you watch the movie or read the book by Dr. Richard Werner, The Princes of the Yen, that's exactly what happened. I mean, look at what a huge power Toyota and Sony and Nikon and, all of the other Mitsubishi, all of the other Japanese companies that were just flattened and on their back at the end of World War II. They're world powers now. And maybe it's because they were going along with this charade, right? Well, Stalin didn't have to be in on it until he figured it out. And when he figured it out, okay, that's when Russia got the bomb. Okay. And when the Chinese figured it out, that's when the Chinese got the bomb, and the French and the English. Okay. And in order to keep the land bridge, Sinai land bridge program that we call Zionism at a lower level going, then we had to pretend that we were giving Israel the bomb. And so Angleton arranged to leak some uranium and some information out, drip it out, right, to the point where people thought, that the Egyptians thought, the Saudi Arabians thought that the Israelis had a nuclear bomb, and that kept them from attacking them until they could build up their defenses. So in a lot of ways, that imaginary nuclear bomb just makes so much more sense to me. Let me see. Let's go next. Xanadu says, does George Webb think the Butler assassination on Trump was real? I haven't pushed him really hard on it. I thought it was real at first. I don't think it's real now. And I don't, and the Charlie Kirk thing is a giant question mark. I mean, to me, the Charlie Kirk thing is just another extension of this. And, I started asking questions about Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison of the Doors supposedly OD'd in Paris, and then his girlfriend OD'd a couple of weeks later. Well, that's really convenient, if they are actually living in Tahiti. And because Jim Morrison's father was the admiral who was in charge of the Navy group that pulled off the Gulf of Tonkin school play. So I haven't talked to George about it lately. I know that George is running around on the Charlie Kirk thing right now, and he's running around the country and doing all that other stuff. But I mean, at this point, I'm just I'm much more interested in pattern matching what I'm working on with history. And again, this is taking me. I named the show To Believe or Not to Believe, because I spent an entire day, believe it or not, 2 or 3 days ago, just working on the word be, being, believe, belief, because our belief defines our reality. And if you can control people's belief, you are effectively in control of their reality. So if you can make people believe that we're going to Mars, that's really all you need to do if you're trying to take tax money from them, and they're never going to go to Mars anyway. And what you're really doing is that you're building a heavy lift capability starship. They call it Starship. It's not going to the stars. Starship is building a heavy lift platform that's going to put together, it won't look like the Marvel Comics aircraft carriers with the big fans on them. It'll be a low orbit. It'll be in the same area of above the von Karman line that the International Space Station is on. But they're going to build a battle station. They're going to build a Death Star. That's why Elon Musk is building the Starship. That's what that's all about. And so you have to look at all of these. And again, I think it's my third leading indicator of epistemological warfare. And again, I'm using this framework to kind of look at things now. The more money, and I've come to the conclusion that Hollywood is indeed a division of the Defense Department. It's a division of the Pentagon, because it's the best international mind control mechanism that has ever been created. Hollywood, and when you start to look at things, when you start to factor in ideas that, again, there's a Substack that I follow. I haven't. My friend Matthew Crawford has listened to every podcast by The Hidden Life is Best, Robert Frederick. I haven't caught up to Matthew Crawford yet, but he's now listening to it for the second or third time. This all goes back to Francis Bacon. This all goes back to Shakespeare. And the joke in Hamlet, in To Be or Not to Be, that is the question, is really to believe or not to believe. That is the question, because that's where we're at right now. And the reason that I think that linguistics is the key, and the reason that I stuck with linguistics when I did my takedown of the Wise Wolf article, instead of going after him or her, if him or her are real people, is just the idea that we can tell if we're being lied to by looking at the way that the lie is being presented to us, because it's almost always presented to us either as words or pictures. And if it's pictures, there's like I'll give 9/11 as an example, then there's always words that go along with it, right? And so if you start to look at the words and you look for yes ladders, you look for complex equivalencies, you look for cause-effect statements, you look for nominalizations, you look for those things, you can start to get a feeling about what the level of bullshit is. And that bullshit meter winds up becoming the thing that is real, right? The bullshit is real. The words are real, okay? When Dan Rather says his head went violently forward, and then you look at the video and his head is going back up, and Dan Rather says his head went down and to the right, and you look at the video and his head is going up and to the left, okay, then you can look at that, right? Well, okay, clearly Dan Rather is lying. He'll say he made a mistake, or I don't know what I don't know if Dan Rather's ever explained why he lied about that. But in any case, if we look at the words and then we look at what's tangible, what's real, what we can see, and we can compare them, then we don't have to buy the story, right? Cristoforo says, the subject of nuclear weapons being real reminds me of the current push to label UFOs as real. Yes. A threat to our nuclear weapons. Yes. Our imaginary nuclear weapons. That's why when Tulsi Gabbard said that there's no threat of nuclear war with Israel, with Iran, she's right, because they don't exist. That's a big wink. Okay, when I heard it said that, I almost fell out of my chair laughing, like it's funny. Yeah, okay. Stories of them deactivating our nukes over military bases. Yes, bingo. Bingo, you get a cookie. Yes. Here we go. Next comment. Was it called the Manhattan Project because that's where Madison Avenue and the early Bernays style ad firms were? That's a great insight. I don't know that question, but again, I think that the conclusion of the Silver Strand hypothesis is that the belief system that was created by the Manhattan Project is the actual weapon. Okay, that the nuclear bomb is not the actual weapon. It's the belief system, and it is the infrastructure that is and the game theory that is required in order to keep that belief system in play that got rolled into again, first into the nuclear confrontation in Cuba, and then it turned into the moon landing, and then it turned into the Challenger explosion, and it turned into the Vietnam War, and eventually it turned into COVID-19, and now it's turning into AI. Okay, that's what when they go through at the end of the Silver Strand hypothesis, there's 4 different ways that the thing can degrade. And one of the suggestions was that when it starts to degrade, you have to move the entire infrastructure over to a new program. So you move it from nuclear weapons to the moon landing. You move it from the moon landing, over to, I don't know, to viruses. And then you move viruses over to AI. But it's all the same contractors and people who are doing the same type of work. And again, most of the people who work at those places don't know because of the compartmentalization and need to know framework, which was, again, I think that it's older. I think it started in Venice, the Republic of Venice. And literally, I think the Manhattan Project is the cabal structure that I wrote about in the 60-degree cabal article. I think the Manhattan Project, if you look at it on an org chart, it probably looks just like that cabal chart. Kemper Williams says, how could we lose that technology to go to the moon? And wouldn't China be mining the moon by now and Saudis building golf courses? Great questions. Yes. Critical thinking questions. Yes. Okay. And the answer is because it's fake. Okay. It's really easy. It's fake. They lost, NASA supposedly lost 700 or 7,000 boxes that had all of the recordings and all of the telemetry from all of the moon landings. They lost it. Yeah, they never had it. All right, my good friend Ron. I haven't talked to Ron in a while. Hi, Ronnie. Did I take that picture? I think I took that picture of Ronnie. If the landing of the nukes were fabricated, how could that be reconciled with the 3/I Atlas programs and the advanced global architecture of the World's Fairs suggesting earlier technological peaks? The missiles are real, okay? And it's a compartmentalized program, okay? You need to have the missiles. You need to have all the infrastructure, okay? Because you have big Defense Department contracts. Everybody involved in this thing, they're all getting kickbacks. They're all building vacation homes. They're all putting their kids in private schools. Okay. They're all in on it. Okay. But the people who are making nuclear warheads are in compartmentalized different engineering programs, right? And all of the testing is underground. Well, again, like I said, George Webb and I have argued about this before, but George Webb thinks that it's possible to build a nuclear weapon. It's just not possible to what he begrudgingly gave me was that he said, yeah, that thing that they put on top of the tower at the Trinity site, it was the size of a small cabin, right? And so I think that the missiles are real. I think all the missiles are real. I think the planes taking off. Joan Mellon in the book Blood in the Water talks about how the USS America launched nuclear-armed bombers to bomb Cairo, and that they were withdrawn 10 minutes before they got to the target. Well, I think that if they had dropped those weapons, they would have just been conventional weapons. They might be dirty bombs. I mean, all of the bombs that are quote unquote nuclear weapons that are loaded onto B-52s and B-58 Hustlers back in the day, and all of the whatever the weapon systems that they've got now, they may be dirty bombs. They may just be dirty bombs. They may just be, highly explosive bombs that have a ton of plutonium in them. I don't know. I don't know the answer to the question. But again, the point is that I'm not trying to say that the entire program, that they're not doing anything. We built B-52s. Clearly we built Polaris missiles and Polaris missile submarines and, all these other things. And, guys like Bustamante, what's his name? The CIA guy. He started his career as one of the guys who turns the keys in the missile silo, and they would be testing them all the time to see if they would turn the keys, but proof to me is movies like Dr. Strangelove or The Bedford Incident or games like Fallout, okay, which are all trying to sell this nuclear winter story, this fear thing over and over and over again, because this existential gamesmanship, this maintains the strategy of attention on the highest level, right? And the only thing that you need to maintain it is the belief that it's real. You don't actually need the weapons, especially if you're never going to use them. And that's why the end line at the end of the movie Dr. Strangelove, again, is so reaffirming to me about this theory, is that the Russian guy says that, he goes, how could we be so stupid? The whole point of having such a weapon is that you tell everyone that you've got it. And the joke is, the wink, the Masonic wink there, is that there is no bomb and you're telling everybody that you have one. So it's actually the inversion, and the inversion is the Masonic thing, right? That's again, goes back to Francis Bacon. Okay. It goes, and that's why to believe or not to believe, that is the question. Okay. And if anybody takes anything away from the show today, I think that next time you look at something, you need to ask yourself those famous questions that it's the words that Hamlet meant to say, okay, but they weren't quite written correctly, which is to believe or not to believe. That is the question. All right. Xanadu says, isn't NLP rhetoric propaganda? There are 3 different disciplines necessary to communicate to the masses in the real world where people don't follow Peter Duke. No. There's a guy named Jesus, and he used neurolinguistic programming to inform people that the kingdom of heaven is in you. And I think that what he meant by that is that you have the ability to think critically. He's logos incarnate, but you have the ability to apply your logos and your crisis, which is your discernment, and apply things with meekness, which is a word that has been epistemologically mangled in English. It means quiet reflection. So when you take time to think about something, when you take time to ask the question whether or not to believe or not to believe, that's meekness. It's not cowering or being submissive. It's being quiet and thinking about whatever it is that whatever the decision is that you're about to make, whatever the discernment is that you're about to apply. Okay. Those 3 things go together. Logos, which is the applied use of language, words. Some people call it logic. It's where the word logic comes from, but it's the applied use of words. It's what I'm doing right now. If I'm using words, they're coming out of my mouth, they're going into my microphone, they're coming out of your speaker, they're going into your ear, it's causing something to happen in your consciousness. You consider whatever it is that I'm saying. That's meekness, right? In the Greek original meaning of the word. And then you use your discernment to determine whether or not you think that what Peter Duke is saying is correct. And then and you do that by juggling words around, which is logos. So the reason that the oligarchs who have been in control of this world for 3,000 years, Plato talked about the same problem. Okay, 1,000 years before Jesus, Plato, or 900 years, Plato was talking about the same problem. Okay, is that we all have the ability to think critically. Okay, every child, everybody has had the experience of a little kid that asks, why? It's really annoying, right? It's not annoying. That's what when Jesus says that we have to be like children, that's what he means. He means we have to go back to that curious place that we were at when we were little children, and we have to ask why. We have to ask, what does that mean? How do you know that? Okay. The answer to the test here, Xanadu, is that we are all innately curious. And what happens when we become adults is that we replace that curiosity with knowing. And we have to get back to the place where we're asking questions. Because because we all have the ability to do that. And that's what scares the crap out of these people, okay, is that people are there's 8 billion people right now who are one question away from saying, this doesn't make any sense. We have to do something else. And that's why I'm optimistic. I'm not black-pilled. I don't wake up thinking, everything's terrible. I do think that if everybody went out and got themselves a pitchfork right now, though, and hung it on the wall, I'm going to do a short post on how I put my pitchfork together. And, I think that if we all started showing up really literally, if we started showing up instead of protest signs where we've got words on them, if we just started showing up with pitchforks and burning torches, like in the movies, then maybe the people who pretend to be in control might start to worry about this. Jesus spoke in parables to the masses and only explained the details to the apostles in private. Yes. However, what I discovered when I started studying neurolinguistic programming and I started studying linguistics is that Jesus was modeling NLP. And once I learned NLP and I realized that he was modeling NLP, then I realized that what he was sharing with the apostles in private was technique. And you can get books by John Grinder and Richard Bandler and Robert Dilts and Matteo Morelli. You can watch YouTube videos and you can learn how to do what Tony Robbins does. And I argue that I think that the difference between Tony Robbins and Jesus linguistically is intent. So there it is. And then he says, but I guess the gospel gives you both parables and explanations. Yeah, it gives you models. Okay. And that's the thing. If you read how NLP was created, Grinder and Bandler and Dilts started modeling other people. And it was actually Dilts who actually started modeling Jesus. I don't think that Bandler and Grinder were modeling Jesus, but Jesus deals with double binds. He deals with cause effect. He deals with complex equivalency. He deals with nominalization. He deals with all of the things that the meta model and the other patterns, the neurolinguistic patterns, are managing. And that's because the U.S. Army didn't invent it. They just created a framework of terminology that allows you to teach it to people. And that's why I'm kind of, I've got a story that I started working on. I always kind of like get a little hesitant because I think that people get weird and squishy when I start talking about how Jesus was using NLP, because people think that I'm questioning their faith or their belief systems, and I'm not. I'm just saying you can look at him in a spiritual way, and you can also look at him in a very practical linguistic way, and he's highly effective. Okay, he's really good at what he does. He's Tony Robbins good, right? Or Tony Robbins is Jesus good, right? And again, you have to Jesus had a different intent than Tony Robbins, but their method linguistically was identical. And so you can figure those things out. And those are the things that I think that were being given to the apostles. Okay. Let's see what else. Let's see. The DuPonts were also integral in building the atomic bomb. No, the DuPonts were integral in getting contracts to build the atomic bomb. Yes. DuPont Dynasty. It's in the book section of the Duke Report. Yeah. Polly says, in the Netherlands, people with burning torches will be put in jail. Then get LED ones. It's Halloween. It's almost Halloween. I'm sure that you can go to Costco or whatever they have in the Netherlands, and they probably have LED powered torches. In fact, I'm going to go to Costco or Best Buy or someplace like that, and we're going to go see if we can buy some LED torches, because they won't put you in jail for LED torches, Polly. So go get some LED torches. Ron says the pitchfork with Frankenstein torch. I join. Yes, exactly. That's right. Forget signs. Okay. Let's do pitchforks. And this is an assault pitchfork. You have to take your pitchfork, you have to paint it black and then mount a scope on it. Okay. Because then it's more dangerous. All right. Let me see. Biblical hermeneutics and fold for meaning helpful. I use one of the great things about GPT. Okay. People will badmouth AI. You can tell a large language model to translate the original Greek, and you have to direct it to ignore, this is the important part, to ignore hermeneutics. Hermeneutics are the political translations of words from ancient texts to new ones. And there's a lot of words like the word meek, the word crisis, the word freedom, the word liberty. These words are all get screwed up when they get translated into modern languages. And that's on purpose. That's part of the epistemological warfare. So what I do when my wife and I are reading the Bible every morning, it drives her crazy sometimes, but I think that she actually doesn't mind it now, is that we'll hit a word and I'll go, I don't know if that sounds right. And then I will use GPT, and I will ask it to translate it from the original Greek. You can write this down. You can rewind it later and write this down. If you ask GPT to translate whatever the verse in the Bible that you want to know is, translate it using the Liddell Scott, Liddell Scott lexicon, which is the Greek English lexicon that is neutral. And then tell it, you have to direct it to ignore hermeneutics. Hermeneutics. Took me a long time to memorize how to spell that word. Then it will give you a straight translation of how it was written in the Bible. And there's a lot of things that are different than whatever the language is that you think you're reading the Bible in now. There's a lot of things that are the same, and there's a lot of things that are different. And usually it's, again, the word logos means that which can be done with words. It also means the utterance of a word, but I think that in the total use of the word logos in the New Testament, there's only 14 cases where it means word. And in all of the other cases, it means that which can be done with a word. So that becomes really important. All right, let's see. Xanadu said LED lights emit harmful frequency. They could. They could give you epilepsy too, I suppose. JFP said in September 1966, the Soviet Union successfully used a 30-ton kiloton nuclear bomb to extinguish a natural gas well in the blah, 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 that had been burning uncontrollably. Yeah, and you were there and you saw it, right? In 66, you saw him do it? Or did you watch a movie? And like I said, it might have been a nuclear bomb that was as big as a house. A Tsar Bomba might have been as big as might have been really big. I don't know. Or it could have been special effects. Or it could have been lighting off an M80 in Jell-O. And I don't know. These are stories. Again, to believe or not to believe, that is a question. Maybe. At this point, I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. Kerry Shaw says something else equals the creation of something big like non-government global alliance, where the pitchfork would be a logical go-to as a logo. Yeah, I don't know. I don't believe in logos that much anymore, because they're part of the manipulation, right? They're the graven images. I like the pitchfork as a symbol, but I only like it as a symbol if everybody goes and gets one and then they start showing up at protests with them. And it becomes something that everybody is doing independently of one another. They're not doing it because I said so. They're doing it because they want to. And other people see them do it and then they go do it too. I like the idea of the symbol of it, but not as a centralized thing, because my wife argues with me about this, but Jesus said that if you put more than 11 people in a room, bad things are going to happen. Okay. Or bad things can happen. Okay? Bad things are going to happen in his case. But he also said where two or more are in fellowship, then, and I think that that's the key. I think the key is 2 or 3 of us at a time talking to each other about this stuff. And if 2 or 3 of us decide to get a pitchfork, and then 2 or 3 more people do it, and 2 or 3 more people do it, then the pitchfork becomes a good idea. But not because I told you to do it, or because we have a patch or a website or a place where you could go find them or order them. I think it's not that hard to do. You order them from Amazon, get a can of spray paint. It's not that difficult. All right. Somebody says, do you use Dewey Rhymes? We use the yeah, it's Dewey Rhymes Vulgate, right? Yep. Dewey Rhymes Vulgate is what we read every day, but we've got other ones around. We lost a bunch of them in the fire. Let me see. It says you can watch the film of that nuclear bomb ceiling. You can watch a film. Okay. Again, here, let me pull this up. You can watch a film where, somebody does special effects. You can watch a film where they tell you that it's a nuclear bomb and it's a giant TNT bomb with some white phosphorus in it, and it makes a big mushroom cloud. I'll go look at the video. That doesn't mean that it's real. I've watched the Bikini Atoll video. It's in my intro for the show 100 times. That looks real to me. But there's a bomb that's in the middle of the atoll that goes off, and it was the end of World War II. Maybe they just took all the TNT that they had left over, and they put it all in one place and figured out a way to make it all blow up at the same time. Scope mounted garden tools is hard to beat. It is. That's fun. And you can also throw manure with it, and politicians. I think it's technically a manure fork, which is ideal. Stan says in the UK, you need to apply for permission to stage a protest. The police then send you to a designated route for your march. In London, this will be where all the new AI facial recognition cameras are. Yeah, you're living in George Orwell's world. Well, I would say you have to be clever. I would say you have to get really clever. Watch a few Mel Gibson movies or something. I think that what you need to do, or read some read some Basil Liddell Hart books. Read his book on strategy, which Ryan Holiday completely ripped off and plagiarized when he wrote his Obstacle is the Way book. That book, he talks about the indirect approach. So figure out a way to create indirect protests in a way that gets around be creative about the way that you protest something. Maybe it's stickers. You know what I mean? There are ways to be clever. If somebody said to me, Philip Dixon, a photographer friend of mine, in 1985, he said to me that one man's constriction is another man's convention. So I would look at that framework and ask GPT using John von Neumann style game theory how you can arrange protests to have the impact that you want. And GPT may give you some very clever ideas about how you could actually go about approaching that problem. If you do that, get back to me. I'd love to hear how it works out. Polly says mimicking can be a wonderful human characteristic. And JBFB wants, it's real. It's real. What's real? Real is what you believe. Show me. I like the more morbidly swollen fingers, whatever. Okay. I'm not going to argue with this anymore. All right. Rumble comment. Golden Tulip says, wear green lights on the bill of your hat. It cuts out photographics. Yeah, maybe. Maybe there's probably ways to do that. They make these masks that you can pull over your head now that have some other face. They sell them on Amazon. And Arthur Stone is asking for Quigley, and that, we've been going for an hour and 22 minutes. So that probably means it's time to roll up the show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn to producer Jessica, and maybe I'll figure out a way to turn off this blurry thing so that you can see my assault pitchfork. There it is in all its glory, folks. And Quigley's been in school. We've been sending Quigley off to school, and it rained last night. It was quite heavy. Here he comes. Now he's not the little puppy he used to be. So there he is. And
say hello.
Hello. Your ears all flopped over. Gotta get you all dressed up there. Anyway, here's Quigley, and he's not as small as he used to be. And we thought that he would be smaller. And there it is.
Dead.
Say what?
Hippo's dead. How's the hippo? He's dead.
Oh, the hippo. Yeah, the hippo. Quigley's hippos die. Quigley's hippo. What's funny is that there is a show that small children in the United States watch called Backyardigans, and there's a hippo character, and so I thought that it was tragic that Quigley was killing the Backyardigan, but that's it. Let me see. Jonathan says, I want a Rorschach mask of a watchman. You can have them made. Like, I don't think that they're that hard to watch. Thank you, David and Jessica. I don't know who David is, but you're welcome. I think that's a joke. Okay, a big boy. So Quigley, we got him, and he was a little puppy, and he's a Bernedoodle mini. He's a mini Bernedoodle. So mini means that he was bred between a Bernese Mountain Dog, which is a big dog, and a mini poodle. And the question is that you never know how big they're going to be. You hope that they're going to be on the mini side, but they may not. And he's not mini anymore. he's a big boy. He's probably, what does he weigh? 21 pounds? About 21, 22 pounds now. All the Sun says, thank you. You're welcome. If you want to support this show, I'm going to make a commercial. I was going to make one yesterday, but I published a bunch of content instead. You can go to thedukereport.substack.com. You could become a paid subscriber. That way you can leave comments on the posts. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/thedukereport, and you can leave, you can buy me a coffee, or you can buy me as many coffees as you like. I try to avoid having people be members on Buy Me a Coffee anymore. I'd rather have you do it on Substack, because Substack just gives me way more tools to be able to contact you and things like that. And then you can also buy a shirt. If you click on the shop button at the Duke Report, you can see the edgy t-shirts that I have to sell, and that I think are kind of clever and not so political. My favorite one, I ordered a bunch that I'm supposed to be wearing. I'm wearing my Is it going to let me do this? I have to turn off this FaceTime thing. What is it? Center stage that Apple does. And then I have to tip the camera. And I'm wearing my Silver Strand t-shirt. And that is from CaliforniaCut.com. Anyway, if you want to support the Duke Report, go to the Duke Report, hit the shop button, or you can buy my book. You can go to Amazon, Stealth Power and the Illusion of Democracy. And I have written a bunch of new articles. Are your t-shirts 100% cotton? Some of them are. You got to check. I use this service provider called Spreadshirt, and they have like, when I'm putting the product alignment together, they have like every t-shirt that you can buy. And so there's like 10 different versions of a men's t-shirt. I always choose the premium one, which I think is cotton. I think it's 100% cotton. There it is. Oh, I see. I have no idea how that turned into David. I swear I typed Peter. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was a photographer back in the day, I was going to a modeling agency to pick up some cards, and the receptionist at the modeling agency was not a very smart woman, and a friend of mine had given me a Duke University sweatshirt because she thought it was funny because I'm Peter Duke and she went to Duke, and she got me this Duke sweatshirt, and I was wearing this Duke sweatshirt, and I go to walk in the modeling agency. The receptionist is walking out. I'm on the sidewalk. I'm in front of the street, and she looks at my sweatshirt and she goes, "David Duke," and she just slaps me across the face and she knocks my glasses off. And I went, "What are you doing? It's a university, Duke University." And she went, "Oh." It was like unbelievable. People are so dumb. Let me see. The Duke Report would be great. I don't know what that, I'm sure that it means something great. Is this the regular time? I try to do it on Tuesdays at 2:00 Pacific. Yes, I try to do it then. With that, I'm going to say hasta la vista. Hopefully Quigley will not be any bigger the next time I see you. And until then, ask yourself the question. What's the question? What's the name of the show? The name of the show is To Believe or Not to Believe. To believe or not to believe. That is the question. There it is.